Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching PlainSpeak with me, Shivani Gupta. As the probe widens in the Mangaluru blast probe, chilling details have come to the fore. The main accused in this case, Mohammad Shareeq's phone was checked by Karnataka cops, and what's come to light is a possible diabolical design, one that India is not too unfamiliar with. Shareeq used the picture of the famous Shiva Adi Yogi idol at Isha Foundation's Coimbatore Center as the profile pic of a WhatsApp group he created. The group was active till 18th of November, a day before the inadvertent blast in Mangaluru foiled Shareeq's plans. Remember, in a bid to portray himself as possibly Hindu, Shareeq had stolen the identity, the Aadhaar card of a man called Prem Raj, based in Hubli. He created a WhatsApp group using Prem Raj's identity. He also enrolled himself in a mobile training center using the ID of Prem Raj. Now the question that arises is, why would a radical Islamist do so? Was this a clear design to pass off his crimes as, quote, Hindu terror? We will take those questions to our guests in a bit, but first let me just break down more of how Shareeq masked his real identity in several ways. Now, ploy number one was to assume the identity of someone else. This someone else happens to be Prem Raj. As I mentioned, he's a Hubli resident. The Aadhaar card of Prem Raj that was stolen or lost was found with the accused, who was himself injured in this inadvertent blast. Now, there's the second angle, which is the creation of a WhatsApp group using Prem Raj's name. This is the other information that has now come out after investigators have gone through the mobile phone, and that's the picture that I was also referring to. That's ploy number three. Using this picture, the Adi Yogi picture, as a chat group's display or, display picture. Why would you do that? Are you trying to project yourself as a follower of a certain religion or not? Especially when you use a very overtly religious picture. You want to project yourself as devout, possibly? Ploy number four, let's not forget, he also used the Aadhaar card of a man named Surendran to buy the SIM card. As I mentioned yesterday, as we tracked these details of this case, Surendran actually willfully gave his Aadhaar to Shareeq to buy this SIM card, and he says he doesn't know any more details about Shareeq, but Shareeq and Surendran were sharing a dormitory where they met, and Shareeq asked him or requested him to let him buy a SIM card, a mobile phone, on his identity. Now, this is also a cautionary tale. Please do not do this to anyone. Do not give your identity to anyone to let them buy SIM cards. The rule for Aadhaar mapping for SIM cards exists for a reason. And here, this man used Surendran's identity to buy a SIM card. Now, of course, his plan was foiled, so all of these details have come to light. One only wonders, shudders to think what would have happened had he managed to carry out blasts that he wanted and then gone underground. Now, there would be natural comparisons to what Pakistan terrorists tried to pull off during 26/11 Mumbai blast, isn't it? Let me just break that down to refresh your memory. In the 26 Mumbai blast, the attackers carried fake Indian IDs. It was all very well planned. There were residences and people in India that had been used to create these fake Indian IDs. In the Mangaluru case, as I mentioned, Shareeq also took on the identity of a Hindu man. Remember, in 26/11 Mumbai blast, the terrorists had mobile phones with Indian SIMs as well. Again, a clue that would possibly project that they were Indians and of a certain identity. And then in this case also, as I mentioned, he bought a SIM card using a Hindu man's details. Finally, let's not forget, thankfully Kasab was, caught alive, and therefore the design didn't work. But Kasab, remember, also wore the Hindu symbol of Kalava on his wrist to project a Hindu identity. In the Mangaluru case, what we're now getting to know is that Shareeq used the image, that Shiva Adi Yogi image, for his WhatsApp group. So even the digital footprint was taken care of. Before we delve deep into this, let me also break down some updates on the probe, what we know via sources of the accused's background. What is coming to light now is that Shareeq was indeed a lone wolf. Whether self-radicalized or not possibly remains to be seen. He wanted to attack places by himself, not really with a gang or anybody else. These were not intended to be suicide blasts. He was going to put the bombs at certain places and move away. Now, intel sources also say that Shareeq was not in touch with anyone. At least as of now, they haven't really found his link with any other gang. All material for bomb making was arranged by Shareeq himself. And an analysis, as I mentioned, of his phone is being done further to establish more. We already know through tower dumps, for example, that he spent considerable time in Tamil Nadu, traveling around Tamil Nadu, even in Coimbatore, for example. The big debate that's coming up, though, is on Shareeq's identity design. Was it a clear attempt to project Hindu terror, raise the bogey of Hindu terror once again?
From the very minute of incident, we have been trying to investigate from all angles.
Just left hand side of mine where you can see a bakery and the tender coconut, so that is the building. But now Tirthahalli is under the scanner of the police because now multiple youngsters' names coming out from the Tirthahalli is somewhere that the police is serious about and ensuring that no untold incidents takes place.
Let me introduce our guest joining us. Vijay Prasad is spokesperson of BJP Karnataka. Aishwarya Mahadev from the Congress unit in the state. PKD Nambiar is a political analyst. Desh Ratan Nigam, lawyer and political analyst, leans towards the RSS. Sushant Sareen is senior fellow ORF, looks at, of course, terror and the politics of religion in Asian region very closely. And Sushant, I'm going to come to the politics of this later. I want to start with you by your take on what we know of what this fellow Shareeq was attempting to do, especially with his digital footprint or his identity. Is it far-fetched to say or suggest that there was clearly some attempt to project himself as Hindu terrorist? Had he managed to carry out a blast?
I think there are 3 or 4 aspects to this entire incident. One, that clearly when he was using a Hindu identity while moving around, it was probably because he didn't want to arouse any suspicion into whatever he was doing. So that's entirely understandable. If people start suspecting something is wrong, then, his entire venture comes to a halt. Secondly, I think he was carrying some of those identification cards and probably would have left them to throw the investigators off the scent. He can lose, the investigation gets diverted into a completely different direction, and then the usual mafia takes over and comes up with these allegations of Hindu terrorism, etc., etc. But the third thing is something which is a little out of the ordinary. For example, normally, Shivani, what we have seen is that people, when they get themselves clicked with an IED or a bomb or whatever, these are guys who are most likely to be suicide bombers, right? These are people who are going to die when the bomb blasts.
With the weapon, yeah.
Now, here is a guy who, by all accounts, because he is wanting to throw the investigation off into a different direction and everything, he doesn't want to project himself as the guy who's carrying out the blast. He has his mug shots with the IED, but he is also not wanting to commit suicide. So there is something out there which doesn't quite fit the normal pattern.
Right.
But I'm sure once the investigators interrogate this guy, they will probably come up with a far more cogent explanation for this contradiction.
Yeah, I just want to focus a little bit on what we know today versus what we know yesterday. Now, till yesterday, PKD Nambiar, we did know that this man had taken over the identity of this man called Prem Raj. And when the blast took place and they found this ID with the accused who was injured at that time, they went to Prem Raj's house and realized Prem Raj is all well and fine. And, he had lost his Aadhaar card some 6 months ago. And that he used his fellow dormitory sharer's Aadhaar card to buy a SIM card. Till that, it was fine. But today, we've got these details of this, Adi Yogi idol being used as a profile picture for a group. Now, that I find suspicious. I'll tell you why. It's one thing to take over the identity, whether that person is Hindu or from whatever religion. That's fine. But if you are projecting yourself as, like overtly Hindu, or devout Hindu, not really using your profile picture of the mugshot of Prem Raj, but Shiva idol. Does that suggest to you that there was a deeper design here?
Well, Shivani, there is no doubt, and I think anybody whomsoever is trying to project this as an isolated incident, and I can only tell them that they are knowingly or unknowingly just trying to make this a very, very small case. If the entire Malabar coast over the last 2 to 3 decades have been changing slowly, and I've been talking about this for so long, but somehow जब तक वो हमारे ऊपर बीतते नहीं है तब तक हम लोग विश्वास करने के लिए रेडी नहीं है. The radicalization in this belt has been really tremendous. I'm not saying that there is no other places like in the Uttar Pradesh or in Telangana or in other places it is not happening. It may be happening, but this area has got another deeper problem. The deeper problem is that the most educated people are there, even in the Muslim community. The people who are even getting into these things, they are highly educated. They are economically much superior to either against their other communities or at least comparatively in other parts of the country. So these people, the 99% of the people who have joined ISIS from India belongs to this particular area which you are talking about as the Malabar coast. Whether it could be Mangaluru, Udupi, all this. So I think from Coimbatore to this particular place, this is also the birthplace of Simi, PFI.
No, I'm just going to delve into the history of both Shiv Moga, where Shareeq accused hails from. That also has a very troubled communal past, actually, especially
Remember
in recent times.
The Pakistan Zindabad and the Pakistani flag was hosted there only.
Yeah,
so I think most of the
and
time,
then of Coimbatore as well, or Mangaluru, where the blast was intended to happen. You know, there's a particular tone to these two places where there's been a lot of communal strife. PFI activists, for example, have been arrested in the past from these locations. And I, for that reason, also feel that this whole Hindu attack or a bomber, plan, if that was the case, would have succeeded in these areas. Because just yesterday, for example, a political representative on this show, speaking about this story, said that, that Mangaluru has been turned into a Hindutva laboratory. And then there's so much conflict happening, naturally people would jump on if at all in future somebody had posed as a Hindu terrorist and managed to carry out a blast. But I'm going to come to that in just a bit and to our political representatives.
Can I complete my statement, Shivani?
Yeah, please. Let me just focus. PKD, let me just focus on this possible plan to pose as a Hindu terrorist. What do you make or what has come to light?
I am precisely coming to that.
Yeah.
It is very easy. There is a media in this country who would like to see that how can they project this Hindu terror or Hindu as being a violent community. The Hindus are the one who is going and taking against all the other people, and the minorities are under threat in this country. This is the propaganda which these people do understand this. If somehow in one day, in 24 hours, if this could have been just, if this, like the people like you are not taking up this could have been taken as a Hindu terror. It's very easy to, it becomes like a very viral, very fast. I think that.
Yeah, and we all know that such kind of news travels faster. And then the truth can take forever to catch up, as has happened, and I will show this, as has happened in the other so-called Hindu terror cases that have all fallen flat. Virtually all of them have fallen flat over the last 15 years.
Not only from India, Shivani, it is also come from across the border. The people make this such a viral stuff as if there is nothing called as Hindu terror exists. I think the Hindus in this country will never pardon the former Home Minister for coining this word, wherein this is something like this never existed in this country and can never exist in this country.
No,
Hindus
I am not going to for a
second
suggest that there haven't been terrorists or even very dreaded criminals who haven't come from the Hindu faith. Of course they have in a country like India. But this whole specter of Hindu terror, we're running these lists. There were like 5 or 6 big cases. In virtually all of those cases, barring the Malegaon case, literally all cases have either been closed and the accused have been acquitted by courts. It's only the Malegaon case where the case is still going on.
Remember the Samjhoda Express case where it...
Exactly, I'm running all of those details.
So I think it's a conspiracy which is some kind of a left liberal media is also a part of that.
Well, that conspiracy has already been established. It has already been exposed. But let me focus on this because Deshratan Nigam, why am I talking about this? I'm not talking about this on the top of my head, right? I'm talking about this because Kasab and other 2611 terrorists tried to pull off exactly this. It is fortuitous for us that Kasab was caught alive. Otherwise, they had the entire plan ready with fake IDs and residences and student identity, etc., to pose as Hindu terrorists.
Absolutely, Shivani. In fact, the entire focus is to defame Hindus and somehow create a bogey of Hindu terrorism, which has not succeeded till now. God has been very kind to India, and Kasab was caught alive, and this fellow did not die in a suicide blast, but however was caught. And keeping a Hindu identity is standard now, which is in Islam called Mudarat or Al-Taqiyya. And therefore, if you look at the larger level, and let me tell you in our society what we are finding today, that Abdul becomes Arvind in a love jihad case, and love jihad is taking place where they put a kalawa on their hand. So it is not confined to terrorism. It has taken roots in the society to cheat or fraud Hindus, or to have an access to, say, for example, Dandiya or temples or Durga Puja, and to do Reiki. So this has become a standard problem. And if you look at their Aadhaar cards, the standard names which are being used today are, Bablu, Raju, Monu, Guddu. This is the kind of names which you find them on Aadhaar. And if you probe further, and I know kabadiwalas, and I know, plumbers, and I know people in other professions who have kept this name deliberately in order to hide their identity. So this is a larger problem in our society, and this has gone to the deepest level to smallest profession also.
The problem is that, unfortunately, when this so-called Hindu terror bogey was raised, there were so many takers for it, or possibly, as PKD Nambiar was saying, there was clearly a biased, lobby that wanted to project it willfully, that latched onto it so much that we didn't ask basic questions. We have, of course, Congress leader Digvijay Singh, who even after Kasab was caught, went on to further this theory that 2611 was some RSS conspiracy, released a book on it. On that note, let me go across to Aishwarya Mahadev. Aishwarya, the problem is here, we don't know what the end design of Shareeq was or not. It is clear he had some nefarious design. It is clear he was inspired by terrorist groups and wanted to carry out terror blasts. That much the police has accepted. But even as they probe this, the larger question is, had he succeeded, would this whole specter of so-called Hindu terror been raised again? There are so many takers for it. But all of these cases from the past, and I'll run those details again, none of those cases really established some Hindu terror in the same manner that Islamist terror exists. It was all done, frankly, to create a parallel, but the parallel never existed.
Good evening, Shivani. I think first and foremost, the Congress party, as of it from when the blast has happened, is unequivocally condemned this action. We believe the strongest sort of response has to be offered for it. And let's also make this very, very clear that we believe, irrespective of denomination, a wrong is a wrong and should see the toughest action on this. But Shivani, while I will answer your entire concept of which religious denomination has terror attacks, what has been proved and whatnot, I think I want to take this moment to highlight some very, very critical things which should not have happened, which allowed this incident to come out. And if this was posed as a terror attack from one particular religion, we can see how damaging it is. First and foremost, the fact that Aadhaar cards have been misused so conveniently. The second thing is he's previously accused. Shareeq in this case is previously accused in 3 cases, including UAPA cases. And this smacks very deeply of a failure of intelligence, especially because you very rightly pointed out, whether it is Shivamogga, whether it is coastal Karnataka, or even Mysore, the sort of threat of communal instability and societal instability that comes out of actions like this should have put the government on far higher alert, because this is not just one isolated incident, because this has happened in Shivamogga as well. And this is largely an intelligence failure which could have targeted either particular community, and it could have created far deeper, far more damaging consequences. And that is something that needs to be answered. Yes, the investigation is going to lead to obviously the answers to say whether this boy or this accused, who is completely wrong in this case, was trying to make it look like it was a a terror attack of a particular religion or a denomination, or it's going to see what the motivation is. But the larger thing is that instances like this are on a rise, which smack of a deeper national security failure. And this is something that should very, very strongly be answered. Before I can go into talking about whether this is Islamic terror or Hindu terror, the fact is terror, irrespective of denomination, is still terror and violence and causing widespread destruction.
No, first
We're
of all,
grateful in this case,
one second.
we did not
Aishwarya,
clause-
the fact that this man was out and about and at large, some of his other, the people who could have been handlers in this case have also been accused in past cases, etc. I have discussed that and I have raised the question on what it says about our security establishment yesterday on the show. But today, I'm not sure why you're seeming so uncomfortable talking about the fact that it's in nobody's interest. I am not interested in establishing that there's Islamic terror, but there is. I'm also not interested in running away from that reality. And I'm also interested in talking about the fact that there has been in the past, and there seems to be in this case, a design to project it as Hindu terror act. Now, why would somebody do that? Why would somebody need to do that? A terrorist just wants to blow up people, right? They'll go and blow up people. Why would you want to fake your identity? That is because there is a political element attached to it. You want to defame a certain community. You want to act like there is as much Hindu violence and Hindu terrorism as there is Islamic terrorism. And frankly, that parallel is bogus. Not just in India, across the world.
Shivani,
saying that doesn't mean that anybody is interested in demeaning one faith or another.
Shivani, obviously this is far more nefarious a ploy to create far greater danger and terror and destruction in society, which is exactly what I'm saying. I'm absolutely not uncomfortable in unequivocally condemning what has happened. And if I believe that Shareeq in this case decided that he wanted to obviously have this attack posed as Hindu terror, then obviously it is something that you need to take strict action about. But all of this was a repercussion and a consequence of a very large breach and lapse in national security and also intelligence and the failure of such. Because obviously if this action had been carried out and his name had been masked, his identity had been masked, and the investigative agencies had not realized or discovered, then you would have seen the sort of societal foment, especially in communally sensitive areas such as those in my state, especially Shimoga and the coast. And I believe a large part of this is the intelligence failure here. If that was his design,
no,
if that
but
was
the
the
politics of
plan,
identity, Aishwarya, I am not undermining the fact that the establishment needs to be asked questions, whether it's the Coimbatore case or whether it is this case. In both these cases, we've been lucky that the blasts were not actually carried out and the so-called accused themselves got hurt. I've discussed all of that. I've not run away from that question. But my point is, let me just go across to Sushant Sareen before I go to our BJP representative. The problem is, Sushant, this is not happening in a vacuum. There is a politics of identity involved when it comes to the discourse on terror in India. That is why somebody would even bother to fake their identity.
Not only is there politics of identity involved in this, there is politics of identity involved in even normal or everyday incidents of crime, for example. We've seen, for example, although this is a slight digression, in the in the case of this girl Shraddha who was chopped to pieces, we've seen how that case was highlighted by the mainstream media. You never mention the communities, you never mention, it's a food blogger or something like that. That's the description. A similar case happens on the other side. You don't hide the identities. So clearly there's something wrong with the guys, who are acting as the gatekeepers of news. Number one. Number two, in this particular incident, I think it is very important to also understand that, there is this rising trend which we are seeing. Now, whether this is part of a larger network, which is, propelling these kind of characters to, go and manufacture bombs and blow them up, or it is just some crazy individual who probably has seen a little too much of internet and thinks he's going to become a great Ghazi or an Islamic warrior by killing a few innocent people. I don't know what's behind it, but I think we need to get to the bottom of it. Finally, Shivani, I think while at one level I would agree that there is an element of, a lapse of security and a lapse of intelligence, because after all, you've had these kind of cases happening and these guys were not really on the radar screen as they should have been, given their antecedents. But having said that, I think, we must spare a thought for the people in the intelligence community as well. Given the kind of resources they have, or the lack of those resources, given the kind of challenges they face, and given the kind of political pressures that are brought to bear on them. For example, how does an intelligence agency function? It depends upon feedback from the grassroots level. Now, if the grassroots level police, for example, is even scared of calling a bomb blast and wants to divert the attention by saying that, this was just a cylinder blast, as happened in Coimbatore.
Exactly.
Then, the local cops get the message that, yeah, look, don't rattle the cage, don't reveal anything, just play it down and, just flow with the tide. I think that attitude has to end. And I agree with the lady earlier who said that, look, terrorism is terrorism, regardless of who does it. You have to clamp down on it. You cannot politicize it. You cannot do anything else with it. You have to just crack down on it. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works on the ground.
No, it doesn't work the way. And I'm sorry, I find it a little rich coming from Congress, especially in Karnataka, where the previous Congress establishment is guilty of releasing hundreds of PFI activists.
No, Shivani, please can I respond?
Yeah, please respond.
This is the false bogey that has been put up again and again. TB Jayachandra, the law minister of that day, when the release of PFI, so-called PFI activists happened, in every single charge sheet or everything that was brought forward showed you that these were people that were not accused of rioting, not accused of violence. These were people who are en masse arrested, basically for assembly. And this is something that has been clarified time and time again, because the BJP will come up and say, oh, PFI activists were released and whatnot. Over 3,000 odd cases were brought forward. People of all denominations, all religions, basically involved in assembly that turned violent, were basically released. And this is the sort of bogey that keeps coming up. This creates.
But what about the fact that your former chief minister went on to defend PFI? And what about the fact that every time we talked about PFI, then people would say, oh, what about RSS? What about Bajrang Dal? What about Vishwa Hindu Parishad? Why? Why were these parallels ever drawn? I'm talking about exactly that mentality that, okay, you're talking about this, please talk about this too. Why? I'm talking about PFI, I'll talk about PFI. And that's precisely where the mentality of the so-called, oh, if there is Islamic terror, there's also Hindu terror in India that existed. That's why it came from that we need to make some sort of a balancing. We need to do some sort of a monkey balancing that, oh, if there is Islamic terror, there's also Hindu terror.
Shivani, in my state, the reality exists that there happen to be extremist organizations, irrespective of denomination, that foment violence and create destruction in society.
Please punish them.
Karnataka, there have been enough cases of people across the board from various organizations.
Okay, fair enough. The BJP spokesperson has not spoken. Can I just bring him in? I'm running out of time. Can I just bring him in? Yes, Mr. Prasad, how do you respond to all the things that the Congress is saying? One, it is ultimately your responsibility as the government in power to ensure, such people cannot carry out their designs. And two, they're refuting the charge that we didn't play to the identity of either extremists or terrorists.
Thanks, Shivani. At last, I thought you were trying to silence me in this show. Thanks for giving me an opportunity. See, let us try to understand the narrative that these people are trying to bring in. Okay. Having said that, the ecosystems which these people are working on, who is behind all these, the ecosystems which they try to create over a period of time? Incidentally, Congress is the generous philanthropist for this kind of terrorist organization to mushroom in the state. Irrespective of, starting from the successive Congress government has been very generous enough, whether it can be in Karnataka or whether it can be in Maharashtra, it can be in any other state. The philanthropists are in the form of Digvijay Singh, Sunil Shinde, and R.R. Patil. We know what kind of statement these people have given whenever the terrorists attacked India.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I find it funny.
Having said that,
when it's Islamic terror, sir, I'll give you time. When it's Islamic terror, people will jump and say, oh, terror has no religion. When it's quote-unquote Hindu terrorists, then they'll say, oh, Hindu terror, Hindu terror, Hindu terror. If you believe that terror has no religion, why was the term saffron terror even coined by sitting ministers? That's my question. Anyways, go ahead.
Let's understand this one. Thank God Kasab was caught alive. We all know how he was caught alive and how Lashkar-e-Toiba and Pakistan ISI worked overnight to ensure that Kasab is not alive. He's killed. And at the same time, if God forbid, if he was dead, the red string would have come on his wrist. His name would have been Samir. His name could have been Samir Deshmukh. This is the ecosystem. This is the narrative that they are trying to build and coin it as Hindu terror. Whether and we have recently seen how Siddaramaiah, ex-CM Siddaramaiah has withdrawn so many cases against the PFI terrorists and how they have released. We have seen Shivamogga, multiple church blasts, the Maruti van bomb case. These are the systems, and I don't know why Congress is showing a soft corner for this terrorist organization, a proxy war.
Well, ultimately, you're the government in power. The government in power will be held responsible. What happened, for example, under UPA era, we hold the UPA leaders responsible for that, including this whole bogey of Hindu terror.
No, Shivani, let's understand how the system is working. Because of our intelligence, these people are not able to sit in one place. They are
Passage of going to Coimbatore and Mysore and everywhere else.
One place to another. And the intelligence
Shivani,
is
can I just give her ask a quick question?
No, I'm not sure if you can say that they're moving around because that the police is on their heels. I'm not sure you can suggest that. But can I just say, I don't want to sound disrespectful to our police forces, to our intelligence agencies. I think the fact that India has been a terror attack-free country for so many years, we need to applaud them. The terrorists only need to succeed once. Our agencies need to succeed 100% of the time. So we don't want to sound disrespectful to them, and we understand the challenge. But yes, Sushant Sareen wanted to come in. I have only a couple of minutes left. I'll give 30 seconds to our remaining guests. Yes, Sushant, 30 seconds.
I think we need to challenge the BJP representative when he says that, these guys were not able to stay in one place.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is the guy was freely moving across states and doing what he was, carrying out his sinister designs. So to argue on that front, I think it's utterly disingenuous on his part. The second part,
government there, they just telling it is just cylinder blast. The police were not even ready to accept that.
But sir, we did question them. We did question them. It's not like we gave them a free pass. If the Tamil Nadu police tried to do that, we did question them. That doesn't mean that you will not be questioned if this happens to happen in Mangaluru. But sir, I have limited time. One second.
But
let him finish.
Shivani, just one point, very quickly.
Mr. Prasad, just yield for a second. I'll give you time. Let me just hear my other guests. I'll give you 30 seconds at the end. Sushant Sareen, please.
So Shivani, for me, the most concerning part is the fact that both in Coimbatore as well as in this case, the fact that these guys were operating and really none of the security agencies were wiser for it until these bombs blew up accidentally.
Absolutely.
I think that suggests a kind of a lacuna on part of the agencies which they need to start addressing, and they actually need to start doing certain things so that they have a greater presence on the ground and they can hear stuff from the ground rather than just rely upon
absolutely.
What
I
you call
discussed
technical
exactly
intelligence.
that yesterday, so I didn't want to give time or spend time discussing that again today, but I take all of those points. It is a matter of concern that all of these men had priors and they were moving around despite being on the radar. Yes, this man had got bail by court, but you are still should be on the radar as a radicalized individual. Yes, PKD Nambia, 30 seconds.
I just wanted to quickly say one thing that Aishwarya was just talking about that how the intelligence agencies, how I just wanted to tell her one thing, that Abdul Nasser Madani, when in 1990, the Coimbatore blast case, which was many people were killed attacking on the LK Advani then. He is still behind the bar. Your own chief ministers from Kerala, multiple chief ministers had visited him. He is being still receives, he's still in jail. Whenever he comes in a parole, he is considered, he will be given a warm welcome. Even the chief ministers of the state of Kerala, Umman Chanti to A.K. Antony, drives down to his home, and then you talk about you guys are terror sympathizers. Knowingly or unknowingly, you have given enough I don't know how to use enough fertilizers for these people to grow, and that is the reason we all entire nation is paying for it.
Okay, I have to leave it at that. Unfortunately, I've run out of time. I do appreciate you, all of you, joining, and hopefully we can further this discussion as more probe details come out in this case. Thanks a lot for joining us. Moving on.